Hi everyone, welcome back to Learn with me. I'm Deborah Hanson. Today we're going to be starting to look at Unit 4, Social Psychology and Personality. I'm going to break that all down for you, unit by unit, with all the CED questions and the key terms to help you prepare for the AP exam. So let's get started with 4.1, which is Attribution Theory and Person Perception. So this section has 3 CED questions. I'm going to do 3 separate videos with each of the CED questions with all the information you need, the key terms, the background information to make it easy for you to get an A on your unit test or a 5 on your AP exam. So these are the key terms that you're going to need for the entire section 4.1. I'm going to make a separate video where I have the definitions, real life examples, so that you can make your flashcards and you can make sure that you know all these words. I say this every video, but I know it is so important. You have to know your definitions. You have to be able to apply them to real life scenarios. So for your FRQs or in your MCQs, when you have those options you have a question and you have the options, you have to be able to know the definition of each of the options that's available. So super, super important to know your key terms in AP Psychology. So the first CED question for 4.1 is explain how attribution theory applies to behavior and mental processes. So let's break that down with all the essential knowledge that the College Board wants you to know, and we'll look at the definitions embedded within that information. And then, like I said, separate video for just the words and the explanations. So today we're going to talk about attribution theory. It's a concept in psychology that helps us understand how people explain behavior, both their own and others. So we're going to break it down step by step to help you understand this. So attribution theory is about figuring out why someone acts the way they do. It's like asking what caused this behavior. So we're constantly making attributions in our daily lives to make sense of the world. So for example, if someone is late to class, you might think, are they disorganized or did something happen along the way? These are attributions. When we make attributions, there's one big question we need to answer. Is this behavior due to something about the person, or is it because of the situation? So if we think about the person, we're making a dispositional attribution. If we think about the situation, we're making a situational attribution. Let's start with dispositional attributions. These are when we explain someone's behavior by their internal qualities like personality, intelligence, or effort. Here's some examples for you. Imagine your friend gets a perfect score on a test. You might think they ace the test because they're just naturally smart. Here, you're focusing on their internal ability. On the other hand, situational attributions are like when we explain someone's behavior by external circumstances around them, things like luck, environment, or difficulty of the task. Example, your friend aces the same test, but this time you think they aced the test because it was an easy test. Now you're focusing on the situation, not the person. So why do attributions matter? The way we explain behavior can affect how we react around the situations that are occurring, around the people and the situations. So if we think someone failed because they're lazy, dispositional, and we might judge them more harshly. If we think they failed because they were dealing with a tough situation, situational, we might feel more empathy. Understanding attribution theory helps us navigate our relationships, avoid unfair judgments, and think critically about the reasons behind such behaviors. So to sum it up, attribution theory helps us answer the questions of why people act the way they do. Do we blame their internal qualities or external circumstances? And understanding these distinctions help us explain behavior and reactions more thoughtfully. So remember, when you see behavior, ask yourself, is this about the person, or is it about the situation? So let's talk about explanatory styles, which are habitual ways people explain events in their lives. This concept is important because it can influence not only how we think about ourselves and the world, but also our mental health. So first, what is explanatory style? It's a habitual way of explaining events. It's the story you tell yourself about why something happened. The way you explain events, whether positively or negatively, can significantly affect your emotions, your behavior, and even your mental health. There are 2 main types of explanatory styles, optimistic and pessimistic. So, optimistic explanatory style. So this is when you explain positive outcomes as being due to internal dispositional factors, like your abilities or your efforts. So you explain negative outcomes as being due to external situational factors like bad luck or temporary circumstances. For example, I failed the test because I was sick, but I'm really usually good at this subject. Here, the person recognizes the negative outcome, the failing, but attributes it to a temporary external factor, being sick. They still see themselves as competent in the subject overall. Now, pessimistic explanatory style. This is when you explain positive outcomes as being due to external situational factors like luck. You explain negative outcomes as being due to internal dispositional factors like lack of ability. Here's an example. I passed the test because it was easy, but I'm not really good at this subject. In this case, the person downplays their success, attributing it to the external factors as an easy test, and focuses on the internal weakness, reinforcing it as negative self-view. So why does this matter? Okay, so an optimistic explanatory style is linked to better mental health, resilience, and overall well-being. People who think this way tend to bounce back from their setbacks more easily and feel more confident. A pessimistic explanatory style, on the other hand, can lead to feelings of helplessness and is often associated with anxiety and depression. It can trap people in negative thought patterns and therefore they're hard to break. So, to sum this one up, the way you explain events in your life, your explanatory style matters. Optimistic attributions help build resilience and positivity, while pessimistic attributions can reinforce negativity and stress. Now, next time something happens, stop and think. Are you focusing on internal or external factors? And how might that change your perspective? Okay, so we've been talking a lot about attributions. Now we're going to talk about the attribution biases. So we're going to look at three key concepts in psychology that deal with how we explain our behavior. One, actor-observer bias. Two, fundamental attribution error, and three, self-serving bias. So these ideas will reveal a lot about how we interpret our actions, but also the actions of others. So let's start off with actor-observer bias. So this is the tendency to explain our own behavior based on situational factors, but explain others' behavior based on their personalities or their internal qualities. So for example, imagine you're late to class. You're going to think, oh, it's okay. I was late because there was traffic. But when someone else is late to class, you might say, oh, they're late because they slept in, they're careless, they were lazy, whatever. So you see the difference for yourself. You focus on the situation, the traffic. But for others, you assume something about their character, the carelessness, the laziness, the disorganization, whatever that would be. Next is fundamental attribution error. So basically here, they're very closely related, but it's when we overestimate dispositional factors, our internal traits, and underestimate situational factors, the external circumstances, when explaining someone else's behavior. So, for example, if you see someone who's unemployed, you might think, oh, wow, they're unemployed because they're lazy. But in reality, maybe the job market's tough or their situation is out of their control. This error will often lead to unfair judgments because we're ignoring the external factors that might be influencing the other person's behavior. The next one is self-serving bias. So, this focuses on how we explain our own successes and our failures as well. So, for example, when we succeed, we tend to credit ourselves and focus on our dispositional factors. For example, well, I won because I'm talented. But when we fail, we blame external circumstances or situational factors. For example, well, I lost the game because the referee was being really unfair. This bias helps protect our self-esteem, but it can also prevent us from taking responsibility when things go wrong. So, why is this all important? First, these biases, they shape how we judge ourselves and others. They can also affect our relationships, our decisions, and even how we handle conflicts. So recognizing these biases can help us think more critically and empathetically when we're interpreting behaviors. Okay, let's recap all of that. Actor-observer bias. We excuse ourselves with situations but blame others' personalities. Fundamental attribution error. We overfocus on internal strengths for others' actions. And self-serving bias. We credit ourselves for wins and blame circumstances for losses. So next time you're explaining your behavior, yours or someone else's, stop and ask yourself, am I being fair? Or is bias sneaking in? Okay, so let's focus now on how attribution theory influences our behavior and our mental processes. Because understanding these effects is really important because it's the way we explain the events in our lives. So everything we do impacts our actions, our thoughts, and our relationships. So let's start talking about like how the attributions influence our actions. So for example, if you think about optimistic attributions, so when people make optimistic attributions, we're focusing on the positive explanations for an outcome. So this can increase our motivation, our resilience, because the efforts and the abilities that we're doing make a difference. So for example, if you think of it this way, if you fail a test and then you think, well, you know what? I didn't study hard enough, but I'm going to do better next time. You're more likely next time to work harder and improve. Now, if we look at the pessimistic attributions, on the other hand, they focus on negative explanations and they often blame internal or uncontrollable factors. So this can lead to avoidance behavior and low self-esteem. So for example, again, if you think, oh, I failed this test, and I think, oh, I'm just not smart enough. I can't do it. You're not going to get, you might give up or you might just stop trying altogether. The way we explain events directly impacts how we react to challenges and opportunities. Okay, now let's look at how mental processes, how the attributions shape thoughts and judgment. So biases and distorted perception. So attribution biases like blaming others or overestimating dispositional factors can distort our judgments. So these distorted perceptions can create misunderstandings in our relationships, and it can also lead to poor decision making. So for example, if you assume someone is rude because of their personality, that's dispositional. Instead of their stressful day, that's situational. So you might unfairly judge them and damage your relationship with them. So here we look at empathy and conflict reduction. So on the flip side, understanding attribution theory can help us become more empathetic. Recognizing the role of situational factors can reduce conflicts and kind of improve the way we relate to each other. Here's an example. If someone snaps at you, instead of assuming they're mean or angry at you or not so nice, you might think, well, maybe they're just having a bad day. And this mindset fosters patience and connection. So why is this important? Attribution styles influence our behavior, whether we persist or whether we give up. They also shape our mental processes, and it affects how we see ourselves and others. So, by understanding attributions, we can challenge negative thought patterns, we can build resilience, we can approach relationships with more empathy and fairness. So, the next time you face a challenge or you observe someone's behavior, you need to pause and reflect. Am I focusing on internal traits or external traits? And how might reframing my attributions help me respond better? So, attributions shape how we experience the world by understanding them, and it helps us improve our lives and our relationships. So, it's important to look at the real life applications of attribution theory and biases. So, let's think about like in education. So, teachers can encourage optimistic attributions to. Okay, so let's sum that all up, everything we've just talked about for this particular CED question. Attribution theory helps explain how we interpret behavior and mental processes. Dispositional versus situational attributions play a key role in our judgments. Explanatory style and biases significantly affect our mental health and social interactions, and recognizing and addressing biases can lead to healthier behavior and improve relationships. So that pretty much covers all the essential knowledge from CED question number 1, explain how attribution theory applies to behavior and mental processes. Now we're going to go on to the second and third question for this particular section of Unit 4. So before I leave, I'm going to leave you with a final thought. So I was watching back some of the video today, and I'm noticing I'm looking pretty tired on these videos. But then I said to myself, oh, you know what? That's okay because, I'm still jet lagged. I actually flew 13 and a half hours yesterday from Dubai, where I live, to Canada to visit my family. So in the comments, tell me what kind of attribution am I making? So hopefully you enjoyed the content today. And if you did, please hit that subscribe button for me and the like. And after you leave the comment, that would be great. And if you want to see the full slideshow for Unit 4, the link is below to my Teacher Tape 8 Teacher Store, where you'll find the workbook and slideshow for Unit 4. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.